Hello and welcome to NewsRap Local. I'm your host, Justin Chapman. I'm a Pasadena-based journalist who has covered this community and served this community for more than 16 years. I was born and raised here in Pasadena and Altadena. I began my career writing for the Pasadena Weekly, and when I was 19, I became the youngest elected official in LA County when I ran for and won a seat on the Altadena Town Council. I've served on numerous local nonprofit boards, the West Pasadena Residents Association, the Northwest Commission, and more. I've written for more than 24 print and online publications, and I'm a graduate of UC Berkeley and USC. Whether you're familiar with my work or just getting to know me, I'm looking forward to providing you with a roundup of what's going on in this community every month. You'll also hear from community, government, business, media, and nonprofit leaders. There's a lot going on, so let's get right to it.
The Mars helicopter Ingenuity has descended to the planet's surface, preparing for its maiden flight. The new experimental helicopter arrived on the red planet just weeks ago, along with JPL's Perseverance rover. Ingenuity is scheduled to spend 30 Martian days, called sols, conducting a series of test flights in the thin Martian atmosphere, which is only about 1% as dense as that of Earth's. Deputy Operations Lead for the Mars Ingenuity helicopter, Teddy Zanettos, said, "Our 30-sol test schedule is front-loaded with exciting milestones. Whatever the future holds, we will acquire all the flight data we can within that time frame." His team is expecting an action-packed month. For more information on the Ingenuity helicopter, go to mars.nasa.gov/technology/helicopter. Since the beginning of pandemic protocols, public comments during city council meetings have been read aloud by city staff. Members of the public wishing to participate will have the option to complete an online speaker card or call city staff to assist with completing the card over the phone. Participants will then be able to connect to the virtual meeting and have the chance to make their comments when called upon through their computer or by phone. Speakers will have 3 minutes to complete their comments, the standard time allotted. As stated in the council's meeting policy, the mayor and city council may limit speaking time as necessary. Detailed instructions on how to participate in live public comment will be published in the council's agenda. Pasadena health officials are hoping for an increase in funding for the Pasadena Public Health Department, and several city council members agree. Many say the department should get more money and expand its programs, whether that's managing a pandemic or the impacts of poverty. The question is, who will pay for the extra funding? Like similar health departments, Pasadena's public health department was once largely financed by grants. A few years ago, when the grants ran out, the department found itself overextended, with more employees and programs than it could afford. Since a 2015 restructuring, the health department's budget stabilized at around $12 million per year. That could grow closer to $16 million per year for the next 3 years due to a COVID-related grant from the Centers for Disease Control. City Manager Steve Mermel had hoped the state would provide more, and said any additional funding at a local level would require a decision made by the City Council.
Thank you for tuning in. I'll provide a few brief updates on various stories, and then we'll take a deeper look at where we are in the pandemic, the progress we've made, and how far we still have to go. Dr. Ying-Ying Goh, head of the Pasadena Public Health Department, will join us to explore these important issues. But first, some sad but important to know news to start us off. Julia Wisewan Bogani, a teacher, activist, and member of the local indigenous Tongva tribe, passed away on March 28th at Redlands Community Hospital due to complications associated with a stroke. She was 72. A GoFundMe page was set up to help cover medical and funeral bills. She was a member of the Tongva Tribal Council and served as the tribe's cultural consultant. She was dedicated to the teaching, revitalization, and visibility of Tongva language and culture throughout the San Gabriel Valley and surrounding communities, which she did for more than 30 years. She was an elder in residence who taught Native culture and history and women's issues at the Claremont colleges. She worked to reawaken and revive the Tongva language, as well as assemble a Tongva dictionary. Archaeologists estimate that the Tongva have been in Southern California since between 4,500 to 10,000 years ago. Tongva tribe members lived throughout modern-day LA County in a territory totaling more than 2,500 square miles. An estimated 2,000 descendants still live in the area today. When Spanish explorers began colonizing the area in the 18th century, Native American culture was absorbed by the missionaries. According to KCRW, When the Spanish arrived in Southern California in the late 1700s, life as the Tongva knew it was over. From that point on, the history of the Tongva and of all indigenous people in California is an incredibly painful one, wrought with stories of mass killing, stolen land, and stolen identity. But as bad as things were under the Spanish, the slaughter only increased when California became a state in 1850. But much of that history is largely unknown to most Californians. That's why Bogani consulted with and trained teachers and school boards on how to revise their curriculum to reflect the correct history of California and California tribes. My condolences to her family and friends. She was truly an inspirational woman. I'd like to turn now to a lightning round of news updates. 1, Pasadena will receive $52 million in federal money out of the $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill that President Biden recently signed. What is the plan for those funds? Let's all be a part of that conversation. 2, President Biden's upcoming infrastructure bill will have DEI and climate emphases, and Pasadena will also be a part of that and compete for those funds. 3, some Pasadena libraries reopened last week. They continue to have great programming for all ages, so sign up for their newsletter off the shelf to stay updated. 4, current Mayor Victor Gordo appointed former Mayor Rick Cole as a special housing advisor, along with a 15-member housing task force chaired by former Mayor Bill Bogard to guide development of the city's housing element update. 5, the city will be seeking input from this Historic Preservation Commission regarding the recently unveiled suicide prevention barriers on Colorado Street Bridge. 6, the Hahamungna Native Plant Nursery wrote on Facebook that they confirm the presence of steelhead trout in the Arroyo Seco, long thought to be absent from the natural stream. 7, at a virtual town hall in late March, Pasadena Police Chief John Perez said this might be his last year of policing. The comment came ahead of his announcement that the officers who beat Christopher Ballou in 2017 will not be fired. And finally, public comment is back on at City Council meetings, so make your voice heard on these and other issues. The City Council will announce their 8 remaining picks out of 11 for the Citizen Police Oversight Commission at this coming Monday's council meeting. The council is also continuing discussions on the selection of an independent police auditor who will serve as a best practices consultant to the Oversight Commission, review use of force incidents and investigations, and recommend changes on police procedures and officer training. I'd also like to bring your attention to the establishment of a new group of grassroots volunteers called the Pasadena People's Collective. Since January, the group has been providing mutual aid to their fellow neighbors in need in Pasadena and the surrounding communities due to the pandemic, which has impacted everyone in some way. For example, volunteers pack hygiene kits and distribute them to the unhoused, or they deliver fresh produce to workers in conjunction with the Pasadena Community Job Center. For those in need or those who want to help out, visit the group's Instagram page at Pasadena Collective or the Twitter page at Pasadena People to fill out a form to request aid or volunteer. In other news, this year's Lit Fest will be virtual on May 15th and 16th and will feature 12 panels on subjects such as social justice, cultural equity, inclusivity in graphic novels, writing the SoCal experience, the new unionism, publishing and publishers, and Foodie LA. Since we're in need of good news these days, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that JPL successfully executed the first historic flight of its Ingenuity helicopter on Mars at approximately 12:30 a.m. this past Monday, April 19th. The small solar-powered 4-pound craft was designed and built right here in Pasadena, and it was the first aircraft in history to make a powered, controlled flight on another planet. The main topic I want to address today is the COVID-19 pandemic. We'll be speaking with our special guest here in just a minute about that, but let's first set the scene. One new COVID-19 infection was detected in Pasadena on Tuesday, and 5 more yesterday for an average of 3 new infections each day, according to Pasadena Now's analysis of city health data. Statewide, California's case rate is the lowest in the continental United States, which is remarkable considering we were the epicenter not that long ago. As of yesterday, there haven't been any fatalities reported in Pasadena in 7 days. The total number of confirmed infections is 11,203. We have lost 340 Pasadena residents to the virus. The city has reported just 1 fatality in more than 2 weeks. On Monday, the average daily COVID-19 infection rate in Pasadena was at its lowest point since March 2020, when the pandemic really started ramping up. Nearly half of Pasadenans have been fully vaccinated. More than 71% of the city's population over 16 years old has received at least 1 dose. Nationwide, roughly half of U.S. residents over age 18 have gotten at least 1 dose of the vaccine. These are encouraging numbers, but we've got to keep it up. It's easy, it's painless, it's free, it's going to save your life and the lives of the people you love. Let's be an example to the region, to the state, to the country, to the world. Let's get that number up to 80 or 90% in the coming weeks and months. LA County wants to vaccinate 80% of residents by the end of June. Of course, no vaccine is 100% effective. The CDC has identified approximately 5,800 cases of COVID-19 among the more than 70 million Americans who have completed a full course of vaccination, representing just 0.008% of the fully vaccinated population. The takeaway here is the vaccine works and it's the best weapon we have. What we have to battle now is what is politely referred to as vaccine hesitancy. If you're hesitant, do it anyway if you're able to. If not for yourself, then for your family and for your fellow human beings. Everyone 16 and over is now eligible to receive the COVID-19 vaccine in California. Visit carbonhealth.com or publichealth.lacounty.gov or myturn.ca.gov to check for available appointments. The Pasadena NAACP and Planned Parenthood are also offering vaccine clinics, and the city of Pasadena just announced walk-in vaccine availability on Mondays and Tuesdays. So you can check the city's website for more information. Meanwhile, most of California's COVID restrictions, except for the mask mandate and social distancing, are expected to end June 15th if all keeps going according to plan. Hang in there. Let's patch in our guest, Dr. Ying-Ying Goh, the director of the Pasadena Public Health Department. Dr. Goh, you're the very first guest on my show, so thank you so much for being here.
That's an honor. Thank you for having me.
As the city's director of public health and health officer, Dr. Goh is responsible for the overall planning, administration, and operation of the Pasadena Public Health Department. In this dual role, Dr. Goh also provides medical supervision and direction for city health services and programs and has the authority to declare public health emergencies and quarantines. Prior to her appointment as director of public health, Dr. Goh served in various capacities at the Pasadena Public Health Department as the city's health officer, deputy director, and medical director for programs and research, securing new grant funding and managing programs related to diabetes care management and childhood obesity prevention. Her professional experience includes clinical pediatric practice, management of a California endowment task force to improve healthcare access and quality in LA County, design and implementation of a case management program for seniors with chronic conditions, and research to improve nutrition and physical activity for youth. So Dr. Goh, the main thing I want to talk to you about, of course, is the COVID-19 pandemic. The vaccine is now available to everyone 16 years and older. In California, Governor Newsom recently announced that if cases don't spike and vaccination trends hold up, all restrictions would be lifted in the state by June 15th. Are we still on track for that? And is that the right timeline?
Well, we are in an amazing position considering that we're just a year through this pandemic, and that we're so fortunate in this country that we have access to two and hopefully three, we'll find out after Friday, safe and effective vaccines that are really providing a lot of protection for us. And as we see the rest of the country, there are spots where they've been vaccinating, but they're still surging in cases and hospitalizations. That's very concerning. And we haven't seen that yet here. So we want to continue to make good progress so that we don't end up in that spot. What's happening in other places in the country is that they are largely being hit by the B.1.1.7 variant, the one that was found in the UK. And that one is 1.5 times more infectious and more deadly and causing serious illness. And so we haven't seen that as the predominant strain yet here in California, but again, we want to really try and avoid that by curbing our travel and following quarantine restrictions and testing. But really everyone getting vaccinated, because our vaccines do show that they are pretty effective against the B.1.1.7 as well. So, the place that we are in Pasadena is that we have over 71% of Pasadena residents with at least one shot of vaccine. So that is really good progress, but that is 71% of everyone who's eligible, and is eligible meaning 16 and older, because we are still awaiting FDA approval or authorization for younger children, and they're a crucial part of our population. So we aren't going to reach herd immunity until we are able to vaccinate our children as well, and until more adults choose vaccine. And we are expecting, our supply has been steady. We're expecting it to increase, and we're seeing more and more commercial sites like the CVS pharmacy and all the other commercial pharmacies, including Costco and Walmart, and even our Vallarta market here in Pasadena, all with vaccine supply so that people have more and more places that are convenient for them to access vaccine. So I think that what we really need right now is to recognize that even though we are making good progress and everyone's feeling a new sense of hope and optimism, as we all should, that there are still restrictions in place that we have to follow so that we continue to make good progress. And so today is not June 15th. We still have 2 months to go. And we need to follow those restrictions to gradually, hopefully transition to this vision of where we could be by the middle of June. I think that it's contingent on those factors that we talked about, making sure that our case rate continues to decrease, making sure that more people get vaccinated, that people who haven't had access to vaccine get access to vaccine. And if all goes well, I think that I'm very optimistic that we will have additional loosening of restrictions. But as the governor said, as we get looser, the thing that really remains important is wearing a mask. And I think that will probably continue. And so I don't expect that to be lifted until possibly when we know that most kids can also get vaccinated. So that'll be quite some time.
Right. And Pasadena, as well as elsewhere, will stop using the J&J vaccine for now because of a very rare occurrence of blood clots. I think just 6 or 7 patients out of the roughly 7 million who have gotten it in the US. There's several other common medications, including birth control, that carry a higher risk of blood clots than that. And of course, the coronavirus itself causes a higher incidence of blood clots than that. So is pausing the use of this vaccine an overreaction? Does it increase vaccine hesitancy, or is this just something we have to do?
You know, I think as long as people recognize it for what it is, which is really the federal regulatory system doing its job, making sure that we are as safe as we can be. And the fact that we do have access to 2 other vaccines that we're continuing to use, so we're not slowing our vaccination efforts. So that's good. And that come Friday, when the Advisory Committee for Immunization Practices meets, they'll be really carefully reviewing all of the data that they've been able to collect. And there's the vaccine adverse events monitoring system where you can report, and everyone should report, if they have any symptoms or issues after a vaccine, even if it's not related to the vaccine, because what we'll look for is patterns, and we'll look to see like if people who are vaccinated are having more of something than people who aren't vaccinated. And it just hasn't been the case in the prior to this. And this, as you said, is so rare that we really have to get a good recommendation on weighing the benefits and the risks, because it's likely that the benefits are still going to be higher from the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So, but what we want our smartest scientists doing that review, which is what they're going to do, so that we can have a really solid, trustworthy guidance. So that's how people should interpret this pause, as a chance for the scientists and experts to really take a hard look, so that the advice after Friday is still the best advice for all of us.
Right. And so many PUSD students and teachers are back in the classroom, including my own mother, who teaches at Webster Elementary. Are you worried about that dynamic at all, considering kids can't be vaccinated, or is this the right time to be back? And when do you think young children will be able to get vaccinated?
So it's been such a long time that the kids were out of school. And we really, as a pediatrician, look at the negative effects, both health and well-being, on our society and on our children and our families for having lost that months and months of learning. And so with the ability of really our teachers and staff to be vaccinated, with the high efficacy of the vaccines that we've used, I think that it really affords protection to the teachers and staff. And also for the kids, what we've seen over the course of a year is that the data really show that the amount of spread of COVID-19 that happens at a K through 12 campus really mirrors the amount of spread in the community. So what we've got going for us right now is really low, the lowest transmission that we've had thus far in our community. We hope it keeps that way, stays that way, and gets better. And then also that we're not saying we're going back to school with no restrictions. We're having distancing, we're reduced density, we are having increased ventilation and improved ventilation. We have everyone wearing masks, higher quality masks than we used to be wearing. And so all of those things, precautions put together, really make the school environment one that's not higher risk than in general.
Mm-hmm. Great. And before the pandemic, the budget for Pasadena's health department was decreasing, and now people are really seeing the value in the city having such a department, which most other cities don't have. And there's a real opportunity to even increase the health department's budget. So this is a sort of multi-part question. Why is it important for Pasadena to have its own health department? What difference does it make, and how can more funding help, and where should that funding come from?
Well, I'm glad that you say that. The value is evident, because I think it is. And it's unfortunate that it has to take a pandemic to point that out. We want this investment to continue or to increase in public health and not go away. We've seen in the past with smaller emerging diseases, when there are public health risks that we see, that the public sees, that we've seen little bumps in funding, but it's temporary, only a year or two. So what we're talking about now is really a need for consistent, significant additional support, resource support for the public health infrastructure throughout the county. I think locally, what we've been able to do as a city jurisdiction is significant. We've been able to have data at the city level. We've been able to reach our neighborhoods to have a higher vaccination rate than larger counties, and I think it's because we're on the ground and we're in our neighborhoods. So I think that the value is there, and we really are trying to communicate very clearly at all levels, federal, state, that we think that we need to increase our investment in public health. There was a commitment that was made by the federal legislators during the Affordable Care Act for a public health fund, but that was gutted subsequently, and that was depleted. So we're really just asking for what was recognized as a need prior to this COVID pandemic. And imagine if we had that, we would have been in much better shape in addressing the current pandemic.
Mm-hmm. And overall, how do you think Pasadena has done in terms of its handling of the pandemic compared to the region, the state, the country? Reflect on where we've been and now where we need to go to finally get out of this.
Well, I want to say we really are part of a system. We are not an island, and when I talk about our vaccination rate for Pasadena residents, that does not reflect all of the people who come in and out of our city every day. So we are interlocked with all the communities around us. And as a public health system, we work together with uniform standards, including everything from like defining what a case is. What is a case of COVID? What is a COVID-19 infection? Which laboratory test do we accept? So we're part of this larger scientific network and public health structure. We depend on CDC guidance, we depend on our state guidance, and then we work with the jurisdictions around us. And I'm so proud of the amazing job that our city staff have done. They have gone, I cannot even adequately express how they have gone above and beyond while being in the pandemic themselves in their personal lives, but being public servants and really doing everything that we can to help our city. And it's the hours that they've put in, but it's also the heart and emotion and all the brains and muscle. When we talk about setting up those drive-through clinics, we've literally been, putting up tents and out there drawing vaccine into syringes, thousands and over 20,000 syringes. So I'm just so proud to be a part of our city health department. Our staff have really, really gone above and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. And then at a recent joint meeting of the Pasadena City Council and LA County Supervisor Catherine Barger, Councilmember Tyrone Hampton requested information about a training offered to city staff to recognize signs of mental health concerns. And you reported that the Pasadena Public Health Department offered 8 mental health first aid trainings to 60 city staff and 50 community members through a System of Care expansion grant from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. What is mental health first aid? And are you concerned that we're going to see a pandemic of mental health crises following the coronavirus pandemic?
Well, we know that people aren't always linked to mental health care services like a doctor or a psychologist. And so, but people in our community interact with our city services and our city staff frequently. So when they have the opportunity to do that, if our staff are trained in mental health first aid, which is the ability to recognize signs of mental health need and being able to link people to the services, then we can be the conduit by which people can heal and access those services. And so that's what mental health first aid is about. And we were able to get a grant, and we will continue to seek resource support to be able to provide those kinds of services.
Well, you're extremely busy and you're doing such an important work. So thank you so much for taking the time to help us understand where we're at right now. And thanks for all you've done during these unusually challenging times.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you very much. Take care. Thank you all so much for joining me for this very first episode of NewsRap Local with Justin Chapman. Tune in every third Friday of the month at 5 p.m. You can watch it on Charter Spectrum, AT&T Uverse, YouTube, Facebook, and the Pasadena Media streaming app on Amazon Fire TV, Apple TV, and Roku. Learn more at pasadenamedia.org. Take care, stay safe, and go get vaccinated.